As the world's largest operator of the magnificent Airbus A380, Emirates have embarked on the most ambitious internal refurbishment program in aviation history.
Now, the decisions announced by British Airways and Air France come amidst a deterioration of relations between the United States and Iran.
If Emirates always works alone and refuses to ally with other airline groups, if Air France is bound by EU regulations that prevent cooperation with rivals,
French Finance Minister Bruno Le Maire announced the deal Sunday after what he called long and difficult negotiations with the European Commission.
and if British Airways constantly fights the other two to protect its own routes, then how in the world did these three giant competitors suddenly agree to work together? What made these fierce rivals issue a joint statement, and what kind of events forced them into doing this? Join us as we uncover the shocking stories behind this unexpected announcement. The conflict and the announcement. It wasn't long ago, on June 23rd, when global aviation almost collapsed, starting with the skies over the Middle East. Dozens of passenger jets carrying hundreds of people suddenly vanished from sight as Iran, Israel, and Jordan closed their airspace without any prior warning. Within minutes, Iraq followed by declaring an emergency NOTAM that halted all civilian overflights. Missile interception zones were live with radar jamming.
Radar uses radio waves to detect the location of objects, like airplanes, in the sky,
Canceling all communication between commercial pilots and air traffic control. And that's not all. Had the warning come just a few minutes later, dozens of wide-body aircraft with thousands of passengers would have been flying blind during a time of war. And if one plane had gone into restricted airspace, the result would have been catastrophic. We are talking about instant collisions, accidental strikes, and mass casualties. Instead, within a few minutes of the first closure, 3 flagship carriers went into emergency overdrive mode. Emirates diverted at least 17 long-haul flights, some of them mid-ocean, to different safe hubs like Muscat, Riyadh, and Baku. The British Airways pilots flying to Dubai and Doha were ordered immediately to cancel their final approaches and reroute west over Cyprus. Not wanting to get trapped over Iraqi skies, Air France redirected its Gulf-bound A350s to Cairo and Athens. Passengers, of course, were angry because of this, but were kept safe from sudden disaster. What came next were the big announcements from all 3 airlines, with each stating in different words that for their pilots, crew, and passengers to be kept safe, all flights going over the danger zone would have to be suspended or rerouted until further notice. The joint statement was even more explicit, stating the ongoing tensions in the Middle East as the main concern behind this. Never before had 3 rival airlines worked together to give a warning. This showed how serious the situation was for everyone, as it seemed the aviation industry as a whole was at stake. But even without that in mind, the stakes were beyond staggering. Those few minutes after the warning was given were a nightmare for most pilots. Though they had been trained to work under immense pressure for times like this, there were too many things to be concerned about. For one, most of the aircraft had to go in circles around the danger zone as fuel reserves ran thin. Imagine being a pilot in this situation, having to calculate diversion fuel loads while juggling flight controllers with overlapping detours in mind. So, picture this for a moment. You are cruising at over 35,000 feet in a wide-body aircraft with 300 people sitting behind the cockpit. It's just around midnight. The autopilot is working as usual and the cabin lights are dimmed while most passengers are asleep. They all trust you to deliver them to their destination in one piece, but then, your ASCAR's terminal gives a disturbing warning that catches you off guard. As you look at the navigation display, your heart beats faster as everything ahead shows red. One by one, your ATC radio frequencies go dead, and that green highway leading to your destination is now gone. You are now flying straight towards airspace that could get you shot down. When you radio dispatch, you notice that dozens of aircraft are making emergency turns with every pilot suddenly scrambling for survival. This is where it gets frightening. Your flight management system isn't designed to handle this situation in such a short time. Worse yet, The new path you have to follow to avoid getting blown up in the sky adds at least 800 nautical miles to your flight. This means this flight might consume a lot more fuel than what is stored in the reserve. All the closer airports where you could have landed safely are now filling up with unexpected traffic. You have just 4 to 5 minutes to make a hard decision. Will you take the risk of trying to land at a close-by airport, even with the risk of not getting clearance to land mid-flight, or would you take the long route and risk running out of fuel along the way? While you and the others are thinking of the right decision to make, you start getting multiple military alerts. Now you are navigating a war zone where a commercial plane could be mistaken for a military threat. One wrong turn, and 300 innocent people could get vaporized by a nervous missile operator on high alert. Realizing that every decision means running into the same restrictions, you start coordinating with your cabin crew. To prevent panic, your crew tells the passengers only half of the story to avoid mayhem at 36,000 feet above the sea. Whatever decision you make, you have to remain calm and professional while adapting to a problem no prior training can fully prepare you for. Less than an hour later, you and the others manage to land safely at a nearby airport with very limited space available. The moments after landing bring joy and relief, but here comes the part that keeps you awake at night afterwards. Had that message been delayed by just a minute, you would have been painted by military radar with higher jets trying to intercept you. Worst case scenario, you are either forced down or eliminated with the 300 passengers trusting you with their lives. This is what it means to be a commercial pilot whenever the skies go dark, and it was so disturbing that all 3 airlines had to make a joint announcement about it over a month later. The global effects of this single event were unimaginable. The ripple effect. By 3 a.m. UTC, it seemed the world had witnessed one of the most dramatic collapses of coordinated airspace control in modern transportation. It seemed the skies never fully recovered from that event from over a month ago. By the time ceasefire talks began between Israel and Israel on June 24th with mediation from the United States government and Qatar,
ceasefire between Israel and Hamas is becoming increasingly unlikely for the time being after the U.S. Special Envoy withdrew mediators from indirect peace talks with both sides in Doha.
The global airline industry had already suffered a strong blow. Emirates struggled with stabilizing new routes. British Airways struggled with keeping new schedules, while Air France kept wrestling with the overnight crisis. And just like that, what started as a quick airspace blackout had become a global disruption. Keep in mind that the affected region is the airspace that forms the critical bridge between Europe, Asia, and Africa. Airlines from over 30 countries rely on these pathways for easy travel between continents. Without this route, the entire map of long-range transportation had to be redrawn from the ground up. In less than a cat, over 400 flights were either delayed, rerouted, or canceled. We are talking about carriers from Singapore to Frankfurt and from Nairobi to New York getting impacted. Emirates, for example, operates over 1,500 flights from Dubai and was forced to reconstruct the entire east-west network. All the flights to London, Frankfurt, Paris, and Zurich were extended by at least an hour. British Airways and Air France faced similar issues, as many of their eastbound routes to India, Southeast Asia, and Australia had to pass through Egypt and Central Asia. These adjustments came at an impossible cost, both in time and fuel. For context, a typical London to Singapore flight that took 12 hours now takes almost 15 hours with additional cost and carbon emissions. These adjustments affected premium long-haul airlines the most. Most of them relied on tight schedules and strict cost control, but these changes destroyed the plans they had for better airline efficiency that were meant to last decades from today. By June 25th, the price of fuel for aeroplanes increased by over 12% in global markets, with increased demand for longer routes and refueling stopover stations in different hubs like Muscat and Istanbul. But jet fuel prices in the Rotterdam stock markets jumped by over 15% in the first 48 hours after the incident. This was confirmed by industry trackers like the International Air Transport Association. They estimated that each flight affected by the crisis would cost an additional $8,000 to $15,000 in fuel alone. Multiply that by the dozens of flights crossing over with each airline every day, and we have a financial catastrophe getting worse with each takeoff. Next came the displacement costs, with global airline workers operating on regulated dusty limits. Now, with the incident occurring at that time, dozens of flight attendants and pilots are getting stranded in cities they weren't supposed to be in. Some of them had no proper hotel bookings or visa clearances. Emirates, for example, was forced to reposition their crew rosters between Jeddah, Muscat, and Abu Dhabi to relieve the exhausted staff. British Airways tried to relieve the situation by starting rescue rotations to bring pilots back to London. They did this through various multi-leg flights through various European hubs. As for Air France, they relied heavily on their code-share partners to take care of the stranded crew and bring them back into operational zones. Emirates alone spent over $12 million on hotel, overtime, and crew repositioning costs. British Airways faced £7 million in disruption costs, while Air France logged almost €10 million in penalties and overtime. Now let's talk about the affected passengers. Under EU Regulation 261/2004,
EU 261, and it applies to all flights leaving the European Union and all flights arriving to the European Union on an EU airline.
passengers who are delayed by more than 3 hours or whose flights were canceled without proper information beforehand are entitled to financial compensation from the airline ranging from 250 to 600 euros. The payment could be more or less depending on how long the flight was in relation to the time of delay. British Airways and Air France were both subject to this regulation and faced claims from hundreds of angry travelers. Some of them spent nights in unfamiliar cities and spent almost 12 hours waiting to resume their journey. And as for Emirates, even though they weren't bound by EU regulation, they still gave a compensation program as a means of goodwill. Among the things they gave for free were mass rebookings, partial refunds, and upgrades. Internal aviation law advisors claim that the combined passenger collection exposure may surpass $80 million if the claims don't stop. This only requires a 2-week period, and this huge sum of money doesn't include legal fees or refunds for missed connections with other carriers. It doesn't even come close to making up for missed baggage or denied boarding cases. On top of that, aircraft that couldn't last on the longer routes had to make stops along the way. Like cars having to drop by a gas station to refuel, aeroplanes that made non-stop journeys were now forced into fuel stops. It got so bad that even unaffected flights felt the impact. Airports like Cairo, Istanbul, and Athens had unexpected surges in traffic, leading to runway congestion and delays outside their flight plans. Just like how the bus road gets held up during rush hour, airlines were now competing for limited airspace over Turkey and Egypt, leading to very noisy skies above the eastern Mediterranean. As EV users struggled with range, air freight was starting to become a huge problem. Cargo carriers like FedEx, UPS, and DHL that used passenger planes and special cargo jets across the region were now holding shipments bound for Asia and Africa. Among the goods held back from getting across were high-priority items like medical supplies, electronics, and time-sensitive pharmaceuticals. These supplies were held back by over 36 hours after the June 23rd incident, and along with the air freight came heavy insurance risks. As we know, airlines are covered by different policies for different scenarios. There are insurance policies that cover times of conflict and third-party liabilities. And as for the sudden designation of Iranian and Iraqi airspace and hostile zones caused a huge spike in insurance premiums. Carriers that were found continuing to fly anywhere near those zones to save fuel and increase efficiency were charged a premium increased by over 300%. Major underwriters in London, Zurich, and Dubai formed emergency meetings with legal teams from different airlines to discuss new terms of insurance. British Airways had to create and submit their adjusted route plans to Lloyd of London syndicates to keep their crew's insurance covered as they traveled along different routes. Air France was bound by European Union aviation directives and had to comply with the new European Union Aviation Safety Agency. This agency was responsible for limiting overflights and forcing longer detours and higher premiums, and it took a long time to get to an agreement on what was best for the airline and the passengers who relied on it. According to aviation sector analysts at HSBC, at this rate, the long-term cost of these new insurance terms.
HSBC, Europe's biggest lender, as you well said, it's mostly about long-term what HSBC's strategy is going to be and what they want for the bank in the long term.
Might reach over $1 billion by next year. Keep in mind that this does not include the losses from lowering passenger bookings, which Emirates noticed just 72 hours after the main incident. On top of that, the online travel ticket booking dropped dramatically across all Middle Eastern routes connecting Dubai and Doha. Today, the crisis is entering its final stages, and airlines are facing an uncertain future. Insurance costs are up, routes are being redrawn, and airlines are losing reliability. With all this happening, one question lingers on people's minds. Is this the beginning of the end for long air travel across the Middle East? That region has dominated as a safe hub for travelers cruising across the world, but now the future of that region is looking grim. So what does the future hold for the airlines moving through that region, and what is the new reality these airlines would have to deal with? Stay with us as we join the pieces together. Changes in the aviation industry. For decades, Emirates, British Airways, and Air France, along with their global rivals, have operated predictably. But now, those assumptions are changing. Right now, the world's largest airlines are rewriting their maps, recalibrating fuel models, raising ticket prices, and accepting that some airspace may be permanently off-limits. The ones leading this global shift at the center are Emirates, British Airways, and Air France. These three flag carriers have high demand for the Middle Eastern and Asian routes. Emirates, for example, is based in Dubai and has always relied on short flights through Iran, Iraq, and Jordan to connect Asia with Europe. British Airways, with multiple daily flights between Heathrow and Gulf hubs like Doha and Abu Dhabi, depends on safe and easy travel through the East. Air France, part of the KLM group, uses similar pathways to arrive in India and Southeast Asia. So with all this in mind, what changed permanently? The standoff of June 2025 marked the first time so many major countries closed their airspace at the same time without a timeline for reopening. Jordan's Civil Aviation Authority, for example, remained closed for over a week, even though that wasn't the original plan. Iraq's restriction wasn't planned to be this severe, claiming to be open-ended, while Iran went further by declaring its skies a military zone. This leads us to the next question. Where can we find most of these changes? Well, as of July 2025, flights between London and Dubai no longer pass through southern Iraq or western Iran. Most of them are now turning south over the Red Sea. After that, they loop in through Saudi Arabia. As for the routes from Paris to Delhi, they now follow a northern arc over Central Asia, skipping traditional direct paths through Iranian airspace. Emirates flights to Bangkok now fly through Oman and the Arabian Sea to avoid overland routes almost entirely. Qatar Airways and Etihad have adopted similar routing. To make this work, executives are restructuring how they plan future flights. Emirates is currently discussing terms for permanent fuel contracts in Djibouti and Seychelles to support their longer detour routes. British Airways is adding a bit of layover flexibility in Athens and Cairo. Air France has almost concluded their negotiations with Turkish Airlines for code sharing via Istanbul, turning Turkey into a vital hub for redirected Asian traffic. To prevent the previous financial losses from happening again, these airlines have also started releasing new advisories to travelers. These statements are warnings and disclaimers of increased travel durations due to routing adjustments that need to be made. Analysts confirm these changes might last indefinitely just for the sake of cost and safety. As if those weren't enough, reports claim that a June 30th internal memo from Emirates Operations, Aviation International, claims the new and longer flight paths with increased cost would be the standard until things get better. As for British Airways, the airline has frozen all pilot route certification updates for Iraqi and Iranian airspace for the rest of 2025. Right now, they are planning a new investment in different routing facilities. Unconfirmed sources imply that they are forging a high-speed rail system in partnership with an unknown company to divert short-haul traffic from high-risk zones. Top airlines around the world are rewriting the rules of aviation as we know it. What other big changes and sudden announcements do these airlines have in store for the ever-changing industry? That, dear viewer, will be the story for another video. So, what do you think? Will the changes made only serve to make air transportation longer and more expensive? Or is it the first step to ensuring a safer and more reliable future? Let us know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Also, click on the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.